Jay-Z, one of the most famous and successful rappers in the music world today, is now accused of brutally raping a 13-year-old girl at a Diddy party decades ago. This is an accusation he adamantly denies. And within hours of being named in an amended complaint, he appeared at a movie premiere with his family. A very public setting with a lot of eyeballs on him. So here's a question. What does his body language say? Any clues as to how he might be feeling? We're going to be asking an expert right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We've been following this huge update to a civil lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, where his friend and fellow music industry titan Jay-Z, real name Shawn Carter, has been publicly named as Celebrity A, the man who allegedly sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl in New York in 2000 after the VMAs. And this is part of a civil lawsuit filed by Texas attorney Tony Buzbee on behalf of this unnamed Jane Doe. And she says that when she was 13, she reportedly met one of Combs' limo drivers outside of the VMAs at Radio City Music Hall in New York. She says that he invited her to an after party that Combs was throwing. The lawsuit claims that she was drugged at that party, and when she went to find somewhere to lay down, Combs and Jay-Z allegedly raped her. But I should also tell you that an as of yet unnamed female Celebrity B was reportedly there too, reportedly watched the assault happen and did nothing to stop it. So it becomes a question, will Celebrity B actually be a witness in this case? Has Celebrity B reached out to Tony Buzbee, settled any claims that he might have against her? Because Tony Buzbee's the attorney who's representing Jane Doe. Really interesting to think about there. Now, the reason this is so significant is because Tony Buzbee has issued a warning in the past. He has previously said that he plans to name the celebrities and the high-profile people who are involved in alleged assaults alongside Sean Combs. But this is the first A-lister to be named as a direct participant in what is essentially a crime. Now, what's interesting about this is that Jay-Z's legal team and Jay-Z are fighting back very hard. They are hitting back against these accusations, both in a public statement and in court filings. So let me tell you about this. In a statement from Roc Nation, his entertainment company, Jay-Z said the following: "My lawyer received a blackmail attempt called a demand letter from a lawyer named Tony Buzbee. What he had calculated was the nature of these allegations and the public scrutiny would make me want to settle. No, sir. It had the opposite effect. It made me want to expose you for the fraud you are in a very public fashion. So no, I will not give you one red penny. These allegations are so heinous in nature that I implore you to file a criminal complaint, not a civil one. Whomever would commit such a crime against a minor should be locked away. Would you not agree? These alleged victims would deserve real justice if that were the case. This lawyer, who I've done a bit of research on, seems to have a pattern of these types of theatrics. I have no idea how you've come to be such a deplorable human, Mr. Buzbee, but I promise you, I have seen your kind many times over. I'm more than prepared to deal with your type. You claim to be a Marine? Marines are known for their valor. You have neither honor nor dignity. My only heartbreak is for my family. My wife and I will have to sit our children down, one of whom is at the age where her friends will surely see the press and ask questions about the nature of these claims and explain the cruelty and greed of people. I mourn yet another loss of innocence. Children should not have to endure such at their young age. It is unfair to have to try to understand explicable degrees of malice meant to destroy families and human spirit. My heart and support goes out to true victims in the world who have to watch how their life story is dressed in costume for profitability by this ambulance chaser in a cheap suit. You have made a terrible error in judgment thinking that all celebrities are the same. I'm not from your world. I'm a young man who made it out of the project of Brooklyn. We don't play these types of games. We have very strict codes and honor. We protect children. You seem to exploit people for personal gain. Only your network of conspiracy theorists, fake physics will believe the idiotic claims you have levied against me. If not for this seriousness surrounding harm to kids, would be laughable. I look forward to showing you just how different I am." Now, his lawyers also filed legal documents demanding that Jane Doe identify herself, that her identity should be revealed, that she can't proceed anonymously. Otherwise, they want this lawsuit thrown out. They argue that if Jay-Z's name was released, her name needs to be too. He has a right to confront his accuser and challenge her accusations, that this has to be a level playing field. And there is also this separate back and forth where Jay-Z's lawyers claim that a woman randomly called them complaining about Tony Busby's firm, complaining that she was dropped as a client because she essentially refused to adopt a sexual assault narrative and legal strategy that Busby's firm had recommended. Now, Busby denied the accusations, even seeming to suggest that what Jay-Z and his legal team are doing and accusing him of amounts to potential defamation. You know, I actually sat down with Ben Chu, Johnny Depp's lawyer, and we broke this down a bit more. The evidence, the back and forth, I encourage everybody to check that out. But this is the first time that Jay-Z has been named in one of these civil lawsuits. But as we know, Sean Combs is facing several, many of them from Tony Busby. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, filed her lawsuit against Combs last year, which seemed to be the spark that quickly grew into a raging wildfire of claims about misconduct. But Combs, of course, also faces criminal charges: racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, transportation to engage in prostitution. Federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York say Combs' entertainment business was actually a criminal enterprise that was focused on fulfilling his sexual desires. That's where the so-called freak-offs come in, these prolonged orgies that were held by Combs that allegedly sometimes required an IV drip to recover afterwards. Prosecutors allege that Combs had his employees hire and bring commercial sex workers to these freak-offs, where they claim he used drugs to keep female participants compliant. His ex, Cassandra Ventura, said in her lawsuit that Combs was the director of these freak-offs, often telling her and the sex workers what to do, and filmed it. Now, Combs settled his lawsuit with Cassandra Ventura, but he always maintained he didn't do anything wrong. His criminal defense lawyers say anything sexual that happened was consensual, and they have been fighting, unsuccessfully, to get Combs released from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where he's been since September. By the way, as we have been discussing the intricacies of the P. Diddy, Jay-Z lawsuits, examining the facts from all angles, in today's media landscape, it is crucial to understand how different outlets report on such high-profile stories. But that is where Ground News comes in, because they are an invaluable resource. It allows us to compare coverage from thousands of news stories, highlighting differences in reporting so that you can spot the biases and think critically about the news that you consume. Ground News is a small, independent team that we partner with and use for our script research because they can help us deliver just the facts when we report on each story. So go to Ground, that's ground.news/sidebar to follow along while I show you how it works. So for example, here we get a quick summary of the allegations against Jay-Z in this amended complaint filed by Tony Busby. And it includes the response from both Diddy and Jay-Z that they have denied the allegations. And based on every source that Ground News found reporting on this, 42% of sources are considered to be in the center, meaning they don't have a clear bias, but 39% of the coverage is coming from reportedly left-leaning sources, making this a potential blind spot for more conservative news consumers. But it's not just about who's covering the story, it's also about how they're covering it. So Ground News calculated that the majority of these articles come from highly credible sources, so you can instantly see which headlines are more objective and which might be, skewing the facts. So whether it's stories about celebrities, politics, news around the world, crime, it's important to know how a story might be impacted by the source. Don't let someone else's spin shape your understanding of the truth. Just head to ground.news/sidebar or scan the QR code on screen. Use our link to save 50% off of the top-tier Vantage plan, which offers unlimited access. It's the same plan that we have been using, so thank you to Ground News. Okay, so this brings us now to Monday, and this is just hours after that court filing. Keep that in mind. Jay-Z was on the red carpet in Los Angeles with his family. Very, very public place. Photographers everywhere. The media, the world watching him after all this. So they were there for the premiere of Disney's Mufasa. This is a Lion King prequel starring Jay-Z's wife, Beyonce, and daughter, Blue Ivy. And by the way, Beyonce's mother, Tina Knowles, was also photographed alongside this superstar family. Now, many have been analyzing these photos, trying to pinpoint how Jay-Z and his family are reacting in the wake of these awful allegations against him, while at the same time being in the public eye, right? So we thought, who can we bring in to talk about it? We know who we're going to bring in. We're going to bring in body language expert Susan Constantine to talk more about it. Susan, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. All right, let's start with Jay-Z. So you have looked at still photographs of him. You have looked at the video of him on the red carpet. What stands out to you?
Well, there's a couple things that stand out to me. First of all, let's just kind of put it on record. This is all staged performance, okay? All of them are used to being in front of the limelight, so you have to actually consider the context. They're used to looking at the cameras. They're used to smiling, and when they don't feel like smiling, that's part of their whole persona. So when we look at when they are entering onto the red carpet, the camaraderie that all of them have. There was a person who was leading them, telling them where they should position them, which was putting them in alignment. When I was looking at the still photo, which I thought was really kind of interesting because I don't think this was planned for Jay-Z and for Beyonce and for Tina to be placed in the positions they were, which actually created some awkwardness because literally you could have taken this photograph, Jesse, cut it in half with Beyonce and her daughter, and then Jay-Z and Tina. It looks like two different frames because there's two different types of body language that's going on here. In a still photo, we have to consider the context, right? And as you stated before, this was just right before all of a sudden all of these allegations came out. So oftentimes what celebrities or anyone would do is they tend to overface, meaning like, I'm not going to let this bother me. I'm going to smile and giggle and smile at everyone and appear as if I am unfazed, right? So let's just think that's one hypothesis. The other thing is that we're looking at the position of the bodies, where they are in a line. If it seems a little awkward that Tina, as being kind of the strong person that's gluing the two together, would have been placed between them, not on the other side. So the fact that she's on the far right, and we're looking at their body language, you can see where Jay-Z and Tina are in rapport. You can see their right foot, look at it, right foot coming out at the same time. So that's rapport building. When you mirror someone's body language, they tend to be in rapport. Although Tina leans to the side, it's kind of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. She almost kind of looks like she's going to tip over. She has a very rigid stance when she's standing there. She's looking off to the side. She's obviously very consumed with people around her, the cameras and all of that kind of thing. That's why I say the staged. It's not fluid. It's not something that's natural. When I look at Jay-Z, you can see his lips pursed. That is a form of agitation. So when we look at that, when people purse or tighten their lips, it tells you a little bit about their cognitions, maybe that he's not really enjoying this as much as he's portraying when he was walking on. And what I'm looking for is a cluster. I see a horizontal stressor right across his forehead, and then he has his hand in his pocket. So we've got three things, which is a cluster. You would think that Jay-Z would have incorporated Beyonce into the mix by putting his arm around Beyonce's waist. We didn't see that here. So that's why I'm saying there's almost like a separation, two different frames. Beyonce, of course, alliances are with her daughter. You can see her leaning her head towards her daughter. Her daughter's out up front, is almost in a princess type of positioning. So overall, when I'm looking at this, the mannequin type of stance that Tina has, the agitation that Jay-Z is concealing. So what I mean by that, it's not an outward or expression. It's actually micro expressions of showing you what some of cognition might be. Now, what could the frustration be? Maybe could be the way he was placed on that stage. Could be all the cameras in front of him. So you have to consider the context of what's going on. But I think to your question is, are they united or are they not? And at this point, based on a still photo and 2 seconds of video, it really doesn't show that, we are all together as one big happy family, because it's a staged setting. And that's the part that seems inauthentic.
And to be clear, if it had anything to do with the lawsuit, it would be understandable. I mean, whether or not he is liable or not for these allegations, to be hit with a lawsuit like this and accused of something like this, and I've mentioned this before in a prior sidebar, he knew this was coming based on the prior conversations he had with Tony Busby's firm. It's understandable there would be a level of discomfort going on a public stage with all this going on. I mentioned the video. Was there anything from the video that changes your analysis? You see him in a different position than just standing there. Does something from the video support your conclusion in any which way?
It doesn't support the conclusion because I see this as performance, Jesse. I don't see this as being in authenticity because he's not alone with his family. He's in front of a crowd. And when he's in front of a crowd, they're all performers. So I really want to put that on the table. He's used to smiling at everybody. He's used to being very charismatic and making over-facing and smiling in front of the camera. So when you look at that, you go, okay, so is this performance or is this authentic? Is he happy about being there? It appears he is. It appears he's happy about being there. This is actually an exciting time for Beyonce and their daughter. So this is a joyous occasion. But on the other hand, is it the body language of something that I would say, wow, this is authentic, fluid, natural? I feel like there's underlying emotions there, and they tend to overperform on a micro level. This is what I do. I look at those more nuances. I am not a body language expert that believes that you put X plus Y equals Z, because it's not grounded in research. So I always look for what we call clusters of behaviors. And I do see a cluster when it comes to Jay-Z and Tina, and just in the still photo and where they're placed. So I see that cluster. Other than that, we are using what we call subjective analysis, and it really is not scientifically based. So I think that, for me, I stay on the position of research. And again, X plus Y does not equal Z.
Well, I can say one thing. Maybe this is fair, maybe it's not fair. I don't think he wanted that premiere that night after that lawsuit. I think when you're hit with these kind of allegations, the last thing you want to do is go on a public stage like that. So look, even if he's completely innocent of this, I have to imagine that is not the place he wanted to be at that point.
Yeah, and to your point, and that's what you're seeing. So those micro gestures, that the horizontal line, the pursed lips, that's a form of agitation. That is a masking expression. When you're trying to throw on a happy face and look natural, you're going to see stressors or strain in the face. It's there, and I know to look for it. And when you see that, you're going, okay, well, there's some cognition that's going on. There's an internal dialogue that's coming on that is leaking through some of these expressions that he's showing, and the overfacing. So the overfacing is when you overplay. When I think of overplaying, I think of Amber Heard, where she was really expressive and overfacing. Well, you also can do that with joy and happiness, like, looking out into an audience and shaking their hand, and you've got the big wide smile and the big bright eyes. Well, guess what? Those are not all necessarily congruent. So when you're looking at the face and on a very micro level of 42 muscles in the face, and you're looking for congruency, I'm looking for those incongruencies that are telling me maybe there's a slightly different cognition that's going on. And that's what I see.
You play poker? I feel like you should play poker. Has anybody ever asked you that? You'd be the best. You'd be amazing at that.
I trained a lot of the investigators at the Hard Rock Cafe. So I've trained those
investigators
wow. that are, yes, yeah.
Oh,
but I don't play poker. I have no clue how to play it. I wouldn't know how to do it if I tried.
You'd be racking up right now. I think that's something, that's a side gig you should get into. My gosh, you'd be reading people, the sunglasses wouldn't hurt, they wouldn't be able to cover anything. You'd read right through it. Oh, wow, Susan Constantine, that is so interesting. Look what she was able to take literally just from a photograph. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I just was curious about what we could take away from that. So thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.